If you're watching this, then that means you've most likely seen X-Men Days of Future Past. And it also means that you're the kind of person who has an interest in every minor detail or reference a comic book movie like this offers. But if you haven't seen it and you're watching this, then I guess you're the kind of person who doesn't watch movies, but enjoys the references they make for some reason. That is odd. Either way, welcome. Let's do this. Let's start off with Quicksilver, a character many are calling the highlight of the film. He makes a passing comment to Magneto about how his mother knew someone who could control metal, which of course alludes to the fact that he is indeed Magneto's son. And although he is depicted as having a sister, someone many assume to be Scarlet Witch, director Bryan Singer says this is not the case, as there was a deleted scene that makes reference to her specifically as a separate person. Magneto also spends many years incarcerated in a metal-free prison, a precursor to the plastic prison from X-Men 2. He's serving time for the assassination of JFK. Now, Matthew Vaughn, director of First Class and originally on board to direct its sequel, This, stated his version of the film would have opened with Magneto killing the then president. Elements of this carried over with one big omission. He was apparently trying to save the president, who was a mutant, before the authorities intervened. Though does that mean in actually trying to prevent the bullet from hitting its mark, he may have swayed it into his head? Because perhaps if he did nothing, maybe it just would have whizzed past. You know what? It doesn't matter. Moving on, obviously Wolverine played a big role in this film. The colors of his future costume hinting at the blue and yellow outfit he has from the comics. His story gets really beefed up here from the original source material, where not only does he not travel through time, his main role originally was just being obliterated by a Sentinel. Kitty Pryde was the one in the comics with the help of a woman named Rachel, who originally traveled back through time. She needed assistance to do this because time travel is not one of Kitty Pryde's powers. Also in the comics, Robert Calley was assassinated, causing the Sentinel program to be put into full flight, not Bolivar Trask. The same Robert Calley from X-Men 1, the first X-Men, #1, I hope you like leather. Trask, of course, we've seen before in the movie, specifically in X-Men 3. But Bryan Singer altered this by claiming he was only credited as Trask, not Bolivar Trask. So he was just another guy who happened to be named Trask. Maybe it was his son Larry Trask. That kind of works. Not really. But getting briefly back to Wolverine, some have interpreted Magneto riddling Wolverine's body with metal rods, similar imagery to the time he pulled the adamantium from his skeleton. Magneto's manipulation of adamantium probably also accounts for him having his metal claws back in the future. Also, there's a scene where Wolverine appears surprised when he walks through a metal detector without setting it off. Metal detectors have no doubt been something he's struggled with for a large portion of his life. There's even a scene echoing that in X-Men 1. This is the one where they fight on the Statue of Liberty. This movie also touches on the fate of some first-class characters. We catch some very brief shots of Azrael and Angel's autopsy photos. Magneto mentions Emma Frost being dead. Plus, in this scene, we see Havoc's costume, Angel's wing, and the coin Magneto pushes through Kevin Bacon's head. This young man is Stryker, the same Stryker from X-Men 2 and X-Men Origins Wolverine, subtitle, You Hate This One. They even mention his young son, who turns out to be a brainwashed lunatic a bit down the road. We also see possibly Spike, though he's simply credited as Mutant Soldier on IMDb. Plus, as far as I know, he doesn't have the ability to make people pass out. This is, of course, a returning and younger Toad, the same Toad from X-Men 1, one and done, not really, settle in for another couple of decades of this. Havoc returns from First Class. He's the brother of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, and finally we have Ink, who's not actually a mutant but has tattoos given to him by a mutant, each of which allows him to do something different, like make people vomit. Delving into the future, now firstly, I just gotta say that most of these guys aren't even in the comic. The only surviving members are a wheelchair-bound Magneto, Wolverine, briefly, Colossus, and Storm. Bishop doesn't appear, but he does feature heavily in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, and is the one to travel back in time in the 90s cartoon incarnation of Days of Future Past. He's also seen sporting an M over his eye, which is one of 3 ways society is categorized in the future, the others being H for human, and A for anomalous, a person possessing mutant genetic potential. The movie also mentions briefly how the Sentinels eventually begin targeting those deemed anomalous. We also finally get a look at a sweet Iceman ice slide, a classic maneuver of his from the comics, plus Wolverine's Days of Future Past grey temples. The Sentinels also replicate a number of mutant powers because they have Mystique's DNA or something. That doesn't really work. Anyway, some of which allude to Lady Deathstrike, Darwin, though probably not him because he was well dead before the Sentinels were created, and Emma Frost. They're also seen replicating the powers of Sunspot and Colossus on the fly. Also in the future, but the happy future where everything's swell, we see the return of Jean Grey, Scott Summers, Kelsey Grammer's Beast, plus a hint at Colossus and Kitty Pryde being in a relationship just like the comics, and the very brief return of Rogue. Rogue originally had a bigger role in the film. There's a deleted scene where they actually rescue her so she can borrow Kitty Pryde's powers to keep Wolverine in the past after Wolverine's all slashing about like, my memories. Also, I should mention we got a naked Wolverine after he time travels, which is probably a nod to the Terminator, who also travels naked through time, because apparently clothes can't make it through, but liquid metal can? Lastly, the post-credits scene features a character manipulating stone blocks in order to create the pyramids as a crowd chants, En Sabah Nur. I probably said that wrong, which roughly translates to, "Great pyramid building guy, you've saved us a lot of hassle." Not really, that's the birth name of Apocalypse, the first mutant and the main antagonist of the next film. He possesses pretty much all the mutant powers and comes out of hibernation in order to rule the world or something. Standing right there are the 4 horsemen of Apocalypse, his brainwashed servants. Now, there have been a number of horsemen over the years, even including the likes of Wolverine at one point. That's the same Wolverine from X-Men 1. Can you believe we've had 2 different incarnations of Spider-Man, Superman, and Hulk since this series began? That's crazy, right? Thanks everyone. Now, no doubt I've missed a few here. There was actually a Star Trek time travel reference at one point, as well as the appearance of prominent X-Men creators Len Wein and Chris Claremont. I couldn't find a good place to put those, so here's as good as any. But if you could add any additional Easter eggs not seen in this video below, that would be much appreciated. Now, in case you're interested, this week's episode of my podcast, The Weekly Planet, covers X-Men Days of Future Past in detail, plus a look at the future of the franchise. Last week's episode on Godzilla 2014 and the best and worst X-Men films can also be found below. But what's your favorite moment from the X-Men films? Easter egg or not? Literally anything. Leave your thoughts below or via my Twitter and Facebook pages, both ending in Mr. Sunday Movies, if you have anything to say about that. Thanks everyone. Take care.